All right, Garland Nixon here with Laith Marouf. And as you know, we're in very dangerous times. We got a lot of stuff to talk about. Let's talk. Hello, Garland Nixon here with Laith Marouf. I guess I hope my sound isn't too bad. I've adjusted it up a little bit too much on the gain. But anyway, hopefully I'm not too fuzzy out there. At any rate, we're here with our good dear friend Laith Marouf. Very, very tough times right now in difficult and hard times right now in the region. And let's face it, this joint is coming apart here. People on the outside can't see how bad things are really bad in the U.S. empire. We're going to talk about that too. Really unstable. But at any rate, let's start here. One of the things that we try to do here is promote journalism, independent media all over the world. That's critical. You can see that people are leaving the CNN with their fake stories. I mean, what a joke, this recent CNN story in Syria. They really expose themselves as absolute just intelligence operatives for the West. So Laith Marouf has an important site. It's freepalestine.video, freepalestine.video. It is critical that you go there, that you share that site. First of all, there's lots of good stuff on there, lots of great information that you can't get anywhere else. Additionally, share that on all your social media platforms, and on freepalestine.video, they have links to all their social media accounts. Make sure you follow all of those. And of course, most importantly, is they need donations from all over the world. There's tens of thousands of people watching this video and other videos. We need all of you to go to freepalestine.video, and you could become a monthly subscriber. So let's try to help Laith. Let's try to work with him, keep him going with his very, very important work. Okay, Laith, let's start here. Freepalestine.video. I understand there was an incident, I believe, at your offices. Fill us in.
Yeah, I mean, we had a studio in Damascus with employing 4 youth to edit the videos that you see coming out on our site. And the studios were raided, looted, and so we lost all the computers, editing computers, around $15,000 worth of equipment. And the youth at work there are pretty scared. They don't want to go back. They don't want anybody to know that they were working for us, because obviously they could be lynched in the streets by the tools of the United States and Israel that control Damascus right now. So we are asking our viewers during this Christmas time to be generous, so we can make up for the losses that we had, and try to find a way to help these youth escape Syria to safety before they are known. So anybody that's watching this, please go to freepalestine.video, donate, even if it's a one-time donation, just so this month we can get through it safely and in the green, not in the red.
One of the things that I would like to throw at you, we got a lot to talk about, certainly Yemen and certainly the Syrian crisis, but there are a lot of people here who are very concerned. These crazies got a couple weeks left, and they have, of course, they attacked and overthrew Syria with their jihadis. They're working on a regime change operation in Georgia that may not be going as well as they want, but that, with them, that means just turn up the volume. They've recently, you might as well say, overthrown the government of Romania. A guy won and was set to win, and all of a sudden the court came out and said, yeah, the Russians were involved because of TikTok videos or something absurd. South Korea, I've been following that very closely. And basically, they just tried to go back to the military dictatorship that the United States, upheld in South Korea for a while. Let me add this recently. So now the U.S. empire has threatened President Maduro. I don't know if you've seen that, and said, you have to basically vacate office by conveniently January 10th, or it's going to get real bad, right? Um, before we get to the internal collapse of the empire, these maniacs, it seems like every place they wanted to loot, overthrow, attack, that they're like, okay, we've only got a month left, we've got to overthrow 10 countries and attack 15 leaders. It's pretty horrifying what's going on now that the mask is off. They're not, let me put it like this. They usually try to do these liberal interventions. We're going there for democracy, to help the LGBT community, that kind of crap. They didn't try that anymore. They're just like, yeah, let's overthrow this government and install a puppet dictator or something like that. It's when you think of this, think of how many countries I just named. Anyway, your thoughts on all of that?
I think a lot of people don't realize this, but we have been in a World War III since 2015. And so it is not called World War just because for the Western elite, it's only considered a world war if their own capitals are being bombed. So since Paris and Berlin and London and DC are not being bombed, then to them we're not in World War. But we are in a World War. You mentioned all these regions that are being inflamed, where and we have the Zionist regime that is expanding like the Nazis during World War II, eating up all its neighbors' territories, bombarding at will countries everywhere. And the US is obviously trying to save its imperial power in a last-ditch resort here to, with this scorched earth policy, where if we can't have it, nobody else can have it. And we'd rather have chaos in countries than be controlled by people who are sovereign and independent of our choices as Americans. So, I feel really worried about countries like Venezuela that are now much more isolated than they were even just last week. Remember, Syria was one of the biggest defenders of Venezuela's independence. Remember also that it was the Iranians that broke the siege on Venezuela and brought oil and gas. I don't think the Iranians can do that anymore. And looking at how China and Russia basically abandoned Syria, which is much closer to them, I don't know if the Russians or the Chinese will come to the aid of Venezuela in such a case that the U.S. foments a war there. I think everybody on this planet that is, sovereign, independent, loves freedom, are going to look at the date, December 7, December 8, the fall of Damascus, as one of the darkest days in the modern history, because what's coming now is this formula that they implemented in Damascus in Syria will be implemented in many parts of the world, and this date will be so significant in history, the fall of Damascus. It's almost like what happened to Syria just over the last week is the Mongol horde invasion at the same time as the Crusader invasion. So we're like the same moment 1,000 years ago when the Mongol hordes and the Crusaders met together on the fields of Greater Syria and fought it out over the blood of the Arabic people there.
One of the things I want to toss you, because we're talking about, I think, trying to navigate our way intellectually and, of course, emotionally, but intellectually through a really strange time in history, right? A very dangerous and strange time in history. But one of the things, there's two views I find. There are people who are on the outside who are getting pummeled, on the outside of the empire, getting pummeled, right, by imperial actions, sanctions and wars and you name it, right? Instability and chaos, right? Those people don't see the inside of the empire as well. And I'm looking at it very clearly. Man, it's a mess here. The empire, I mean, if you just go to Europe, the French government's collapsed and they're trying to put that together, right? The German government, the entire economy is coming unraveled, and the German government just collapsed. Actually, if you look at the US government, where everything in the machine made every effort, quite frankly, to keep the Biden people in power, and Trump won. And so they don't know what's going to happen with Trump. He's a wild card. I mean, I'm not trying to say he's good, bad, or indifferent. He's just a wild card, and they didn't want a wild card, but he's a wild card in some areas. We've got people so angry, right? Somebody shot the head of a healthcare company, right? And a member of the ruling elite, okay? And all of these ruling elites were like, oh my gosh, this is terrible. The people cheered. A member of the ruling elite was gunned down in the street, which, I mean, let's face it, a human being dying, being shot. Normally, what you would see on TV and people would go, oh, that's terrible. I never see anything like it. The people literally online, they're cheering. They're making memes of the shooter like a saint. They're putting together money for his defense. They're saying, if I'm on his jury, I'm going to, no, I don't care if he did it or not, I'll let him go, right? We've got CNN, as they do this absurdity in Yemen, right? They've lost 47% of their audience, 47%. So the media is completely collapsing. The people have had it with the government. They're furious, and that's what the Trump thing was about. Like I said, notwithstanding what Trump is or isn't, we know what this was about. It was a complete rejection. And of course, we now see let me tell you this, the ruling elite, though they're quiet about it, are scared to death. They're all getting, I mean, all the CEOs, all the rich people, all of them, they're now hiring security guards. You know, I'm former law enforcement, and I know some cops that are out there, and they're like, that are retired or off duty. They're getting part-time jobs as security for rich people. We've gotten to the point where the ruling elite, the wealthy, the powerful, are now afraid that the everyday people that they screw over are just going to walk up and shoot them, and they know that the rest of them will cheer. This place is coming unraveled, and it's like some kind of a pre-revolutionary period. So to me, in a way, this lashing out all over the place is like they're trying to show we're still strong, we're still together. Internally, it's bad, real bad here. Anyway, your thoughts?
Yes. Look, I think we have to understand what is the social contract between the imperial states and the citizens of those states. The social contract has been always saying that a citizen of Europe, Western Europe at least, and North America, is the top of human evolution, and that a citizen of the US or Europe can go and colonize as they wish and loot everything they can. And, you know, that is the contract between the state and the citizen. Now, what we've seen over specifically the last decade is that this social contract has been now limited only to Jewish Europeans. Only Jewish Europeans can go and kill and loot at will with the protection of the state. And the state, the imperial states in the West, have declared openly that Jewish Europeans are more supreme than the rest of the Europeans. Okay? So although an American citizen that thought of themselves as the end of history, the epics of human evolution, now they're being told they're not. That the Jewish Americans or Israeli settlers are better than them, that they are the chosen people, and that only them can kill and loot openly and colonize. And this is why actually Jewish Europeans, Jewish Americans are, for the vast majority of them, are supporting Israel. Yes, there is critical Jews of the genocide in Israel, but the vast majority of them are liking that social contract. Okay, they're loving having the Western media repeat over and over that they are the chosen people. They probably, this is their wildest dream, that that Christian and secular whites, Christian and secular Europeans openly declare that Jews are better than them. Okay, that never happened in humanity. So because of this, and because the loot from colonialism in the Arabic world, in Africa and in Latin America, is not reaching the regular citizen in the US and Canada and Europe, the beginnings of the upheaval as we see it are the signals are coming of it. Because, you know, if the American citizens are fed enough of the loot of in Africa and Asia and Latin America, they wouldn't be shooting a CEO. They'll be fine with the genocide that's happening in Gaza. But now the contradiction is that you can't anymore give them that privilege. And this is the same moment before the French Revolution. People think the French Revolution, or this is how they're taught in the West, that the French Revolution was about democracy and equality and so on, and égalité and blah blah blah. In reality, the French Revolution, the trigger for the French Revolution, was the loss of France of its major colonies, Quebec and Louisiana, to the English and the Americans, and the beginnings of the Haitian Revolution, which meant that not anymore the French poor working class can decide to go to Quebec, Louisiana, or Haiti and kill at will and loot and steal land and become middle class or upper class instantaneously. They were back in the streets of France in their poverty, and then they got hungry and ate the rich. Okay? So this is the moment that we're living right now. In the West, if the Western elite do not throw part of the loot, a bigger part of the loot on their population, they will eat them.
They won't. And they won't. They absolutely, Americans, I think you're right. Let me throw something at you. The Make America Great Again and MAGA and all that was, let's return to the 60s and 70s when things were good. And I always bring this up. Yeah, things were good for you. They were overthrown. They were killing, the leaders of the Congo and Burkina Faso and stealing all of their stuff. They were overthrowing governments in South America, and they had Contras there, and they were turning entire countries into banana plantations. So the people in the U.S. had a nice middle-class life, but it was on the backs of everyone else. So when people say, let's return to that, but most Americans are so ignorant of foreign policy, they don't even really know what they're saying. They're blinded to think we were just doing so good and we were smart and working hard, right? The ruling elite in the West are so decadent and so greedy and so corrupt now. They are at war with China. They are at war with Russia. They are at war with Latin America, South America, and they are at war with their own people. And here's the problem they have. The people have figured it out. There's all these drones flying all over the place, right? And as soon as people started looking at them in America, you know what people are saying? What are they doing? They're going to use them against us. How are they going to use them against us? The ruling elite, the government now in the United States, and I'll tell you, they're viewed as the enemy of the people. The people feel like, what are they going to do to attack us? You see people in the chat right now, they're going to nuke us. That's an indication that the people in the West see the ruling elite as the enemy. They're cheering when they get shot. I'm telling you, I don't know how much longer the pretense that the West is this strong, powerful entity can hold up. As I said, look at Europe. They can't have, what are they going to do in Keir Starmer? He's despised. The governments are just coming apart, and now they're trying to literally they're losing country after country to people who are opposed to all of these wars. And now they're just like in Romania or whatever. They're just like, forget it. We'll just overthrow the governments. Let me put it like this. There's Syria and these other things. They're trying to do this display of strength as the collapse. Another example, you go to the car lots. They're packed. The car lots are loaded with cars. Nobody's buying new cars. Our car industry, just like Germany's, is going to collapse. You go there and people are like, well, we can't afford to buy these cars anymore. Just let them sit. So car factories are idling, laying people off because people are like, we can't afford to buy anything. So everything's too expensive. This place, there ain't too many. I mean, there is I don't know what's going to happen here, but people outside don't understand the volatility and the instability in this empire right now. It's bad. It's far worse than people outside know. Laith.
Yes, you see, and this is the thing is that I don't want us to be over pessimistic, optimistic at the
Right.
collapse of the empire. Because if you notice one thing, I think this is where there was a few videos that came out over the last few weeks of American generals and the guy that runs Palantir or whatever it is, talking about the rebirth of the warrior American and the warlike American. Okay, and so if an empire doesn't want to collapse at the third generation, as Ibn Khaldun tells us in his theory of rise and collapse of empires, it has to revive its horde mentality that it started with. Okay, the American horde was what took over Europe at the end of World War II. That warrior and capture everything and defeat the Nazis and the Japanese and what have you, and capture the whole planet except Russia and China. So now, in order to revive the empire and remasculinize it, okay, you have to go to war and make the population proud of their prowess. Okay, again, not become trans. Okay, and limit the LGBTQ situation, that everybody's fragile and their feelings and so forth. This is how empires collapse. So I think partially we're seeing that the West, at least the American elite, forget the rest of the Western parts of the empire, but at least the American elite are trying to revive this masculinity of warlike tribe. And I think there's one thing is that maybe it's too late, but they know they are thinking the same things that me and you are thinking. And they have read Ibn Khaldun. Maybe most of our viewers here have not read Ibn Khaldun, but everybody that wants to have an empire has to read Ibn Khaldun and understand the lifespan of an empire, how it rises and falls, and to try to avoid it too. Now, saying all of this doesn't mean that it's going to get any better or that the empire is going to collapse fast, or we don't know. None of these things are written in stone. And because of the irrationality of most of the actors in the top tier of the American empire and the Zionist colony, which is now the head of the empire, really, it's impossible to predict what they're going to do and how they're going to act. And I've now, over the last couple of months, have cut down on my pronunciations of predictions, because it's impossible now to deal with these crazies in any rational way.
Yeah, we'll move on, but I'll just say this, and it's interesting that when you talked about them trying to start a war and bring us together, and people in the chat saying it won't work, and here's what people from the internal know. I'll throw two things at you, and then we'll move on. I was talking to some young people after the conflict about, after the election, like this couple people in their 30s. And they were saying, one guy was from New York and he was telling me, yeah, everybody I know. He says, all this talk, he says, everybody I know in New York, all of these Democrats, the young people 30 and under, when I'd asked them, you vote? And they all said no. And I said, why? And they said, Gaza. That the empire, that the Democrats, et cetera, cannot possibly discuss the damage that politically that Gaza did to them. And I say that to say this, and a lot of people will say the same thing, man, as furious as young people are, if the U.S. was to say, all righty, we got a war going, and guess who's getting drafted? They burn this place down. They burn it down. They would not. Black community, you think they go to war? Black, white, green, all of them. If they said we're going to war and we're young people, guess what? You're going. They would burn the country to the ground. No, they wouldn't go. It would be the ultimate disaster. I don't know if they know it or not. You know what I mean? I think what I'm trying to communicate to you is they don't have the connection to the people anymore to drag the quote country in a direction. If the ruling elite say we're going to do this, the people in this country are at a point where they'd be like, screw you. We hate your guts. We'd kill ourselves if we could get away. You know what I mean? I'm not saying collapse is the word I'm using. I don't know how to put it. You understand what I'm getting at? I don't know how to put it.
I
have
understand.
to hear the sentiment on the street. You have to see the people, pictures of the guy who shot him. You know what I mean? These little things that they put saints on, these little candles, they're putting his picture on. He's a saint to working class people. And like a buddy of mine works at a hospital, and he was talking about now on the 4th floor where all of the people that run the hospital are. That's the ones that make all the money, of course. They're the multimillionaires. They've gotten blocks on the elevator. They have armed guards, and that's all over. When you get to the point where the ruling elite now literally have armed guards all over the place, they know they're in deep and serious trouble. I know I've been beating this out a bit too much, but you can't overstate. For a person who's been here for 60 years, you can't overstate the dramatic change. And all of the studies I've done of revolution, I'm like, yeah, that's kind of what it looks like. You know what I mean?
Yes. I mean, look, I think the reason that the Western elite don't care that much up until now about the opinion of their populations is that there hasn't been any rebellion in Western countries since the end of World War II. And I mean, other than the Black Panthers or the American Indian movement, and there wasn't nothing armed in terms or really threatening that happened. There wasn't even anyone that is anti-colonial got elected through democracy in any of these states. Okay. So the elite in the West see their own population as eunuchs, as castrated, and I know this is a lot, probably harsh words, but the truth of the matter is that they don't feel threatened.
I agree. You're right. You're right. Yeah? You're 100% right.
So why they got scared of this Luigi killing the medical insurance company CEO is that somebody actually took action, which is unheard of, okay? And in at least 4 decades or whatever it is since the end of the 70s.
I hate to interrupt you, and I'll say that. And the fact that somebody did it is not the issue. It is the response that of Americans that have horrified them. They're scared to death. It's not only that, no, there's not one crazy guy or one, it's that he did it. And almost universally, go to Facebook and start scrolling the pictures of him, heroes, pictures. They'll have like somebody with a backpack on and the person's a hero and they'll put a flying cape on him and all that. And this is not a fringe position at all. This is more like, yeah, good. That's the way they do us. It's about time somebody stood up and fought back. And I know the ruling elite are thinking, yeah, that ain't, you know how that happens. Once one person does it.
Yeah.
So my point is the reaction to what happened, I think, is the dynamic event here.
Yeah, and obviously, the more Luigi's there's out there, the better for the populace in the West and for humanity in general. It is very hard to take down an empire, a global empire that has looted all the resources of the planet, that can print money at will and can spend as much as it wants on wars, just by fighting it on the battlefields at the extremities of the empire. There has to be upheaval inside the empire. And I think the Iranians, the Russians, the Chinese have failed in doing anything that could trigger upheaval within these countries. So we hear all these talk about Russian interference, Chinese interference. It's laughable. I mean, honest to God, there's so many million ways that the Russians, the Iranians, and the Chinese could have created problematic issues within these states. For instance, look at the Arabic and Muslim population of France. 30% of the population. They've got no sponsor, external sponsor. If there's an external sponsor, there'll be riots every day in Paris. Okay, and France would withdraw from the whole region, from all of the Sahel and Africa, and close the door and say, leave us alone, please. If there was any support for the indigenous people in Canada and Australia and New Zealand, for instance, things could be a different story right now in those countries. But again, I think the responsibility of the citizens inside the United States and inside Western countries is huge. And up until now, the citizens have not taken their responsibilities seriously. And because of the fact that the competitors of the empire do not want to play this game because they're scared of it being played on them, which is being played. We see how they're supplying the Uyghurs and training them in Syria to send them back to China. We see what they're doing all around Russia's territory. We see what they're doing on Iran. But the Chinese, the Iranians, and the Russians are scared to play the same game. I don't know why.
Let me ask you this. Yemen. I understand they fired another hypersonic missile. There was some bombing, but as we know, the Yemen government is very, very good at burying their stuff and what have you. And so the U.S., I think, bombs just to kind of show that they can do something. Your thoughts on the dynamics of Yemen? Does that change? Does anything they're doing change, and what's going on with them? The last I had heard, they had hit a couple American ships again, some destroyers or something, and the U.S. was claiming they hadn't. But anyway, your thoughts on Yemen?
Yeah, I mean, Yemen is now taking the stage on behalf of the other parts of the axis of resistance that got clobbered, like Syria and Lebanon. And although they are trying to fill some of this gap, because of the geographic distance, they're not able to deliver the same damage as Hezbollah was. But we saw them hit Tel Aviv yesterday, and the Ben Gurion airport had to be shut down as multiple hypersonic missiles hit the Tel Aviv region and the Eilat region in the south of occupied Palestine. And this, as you said, comes after two different operations against American destroyers and supply ships that are bringing weapons and fuel to American bases in the region. The last one of them was an attack just outside the port in Djibouti, across from Yemen. There's a major American naval base there, and the ships were just coming out of the base when they were hit. So that's kind of almost like a warning to Djibouti that the whole base there could be attacked while the ships are still parked there. And we saw last night, very late, almost in the morning hours here, the American and British Air Force attacking Yemen, huge explosions. And it seems like both Yemen and Iraq and Lebanon are going to be on the plan of being attacked before Trump comes into power and maybe deliver on his promise to attack Iran. But Iran cannot be attacked directly by the U.S. and its vessels here if still Yemen, Iraq, and Lebanon are out of control fully by the empire.
Yeah, I don't believe Trump's going to attack Iran. I may be wrong, but I don't think I think Trump is on a different path right now. And you know what? Let me go one further, and I'll say this: I'm not convinced they're going to let Trump take power. I'm not convinced Trump is going to either live to get there or that they won't do some kind of literally just military takeover of the government. I mean, I used to think those things were crazy conspiracy theories, that, oh, they just won't let us have, but they're backed into a corner right now. And I am not convinced of anything they may do between now and January 20th. I'm not convinced that we'll ever see him become president. There are reports that Turkey's building up forces on the Syrian border, that they're planning on attacking the Kurds. Of course, the Kurds have been U.S. puppets since the 80s, 90s, whatever. What are your thoughts about Erdogan, his issues with the Kurds being U.S. puppets? We got some, Syria presents, the fall of Syria presents some crisis for Turkey, the West, etc. Your thoughts on that stuff? The Kurds.
Yeah, obviously, Turkey and Erdogan specifically was promised by the West to revive his Ottoman dream and to rule the Arab capitals, specifically Damascus and Baghdad. And at the same time, it seems like he has been promised to revive the Mongol horde and not become only the new sultan of the new Ottoman sultan, but also the new Khan, like a Genghis Khan. And this is now he has collected all the Wahhabi death squads from what they call Eastern Turkmenistan, Xinjiang, and the Uyghurs through the Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, all of that, all the way to Azerbaijan, and have been training them for a decade. And the idea is that he can throw them, do a reverse Mongol horde invasion instead of from Central Asia to Western Asia, but actually the other way from Western Asia to Central Asia, and create a wedge between Russia and China with these death fields. Okay, and so he's working on it, and it seems like he has full blessing of the West to do so. And this is where Russia made a strategic mistake, and with it China. Number one, trying to court Turkey to enter the BRICS, and the same with the Saudis and the Emiratis and what have you, while keeping Syria, who applied multiple times to the BRICS, and Iran out of the alliance, thinking that they can somehow entice Turkey or Saudi to join them. What can Russia or China offer Turkey more than the revival of the Ottoman Empire or the Mongol Khanate? They can't compete with that offer. And so it was a huge mistake that the Russians committed in Syria. I know a lot of people, have been talking about, well, the Syrian military surrendered or didn't fight. Well, the Syrian soldiers, for the last 15 years, their salary was $20 a month. Anyone can buy somebody like that. And Syria had lost its oil, gas, and wheat. The Americans were looting it. People were impoverished. There was no electricity. And Russia and Iran failed to flood the market of Syria with oil, gas, and wheat and keep the people healthy and strong to resist. Russia also stopped the Syrian military and Hezbollah from defeating Turkey in 2016 when the Battle of Saraqib, when they basically surrounded the Wahhabi despots in Idlib, and the Turkish military entered to defend them and got beaten up by Hezbollah and the Syrian military, and Russia stopped the war, forced the Syrian military and Hezbollah to not advance. And because they wanted to negotiate with Turkey, they're worried about the Bosphorus, the strait in Istanbul, that Turkey can close them. Remember, just a year before that, the Turks were talking about closing the strait on Russian Navy.
The Dardanelles, I think, right? Is that what you're talking about?
The
entrance to the Black Sea. Yeah, okay.
From the Black Sea to the Mediterranean strait in Istanbul, I think it's called the Bosphorus.
Okay, yeah.
So what we saw is that a miscalculation there by Russia, and the promise is, it seems like, and I may be wrong, but I think the promise that Trump gave to Putin was that you give up Syria, we give you whatever lands you control in Ukraine when I come, and I'm going to be concentrating on defeating the axis of resistance. I know you disagree with this, but I think he will be attacking Iran. And the Russians, even though that they don't trust the Americans to uphold any treaty, in the mind of Russia, if the Americans are stuck in the sands of the Middle East for another 15 years, this war against the axis of resistance and against Iran is not going to be a walk in the park. That gives enough time for Russia to build up and get ready for the confrontation with the West. So they want the United States and the West to be stuck in Western Asia as they were for 30 years. This is another thing that everybody watching should understand. Russia, that we know it today, with its military strength, wouldn't have been what it is today if it wasn't for the bravery and stubbornness of the Arabic people for the last 30 years, refusing the Americans and the West to have a easy occupation of our countries. Similarly, the Chinese, their economy wouldn't have advanced this much in the last 30 years if the Arabs would have given up fighting the Americans. The Americans would have been at the borders of China and the borders of Russia 30 years ago if the Arabic people didn't sacrifice this much. And today, if the axis of resistance falls, there will be no other opponents to the Western Empire other than China and Russia. And all the Americans have to do is just blockade China. Once you blockade China and they can't export their products, it doesn't matter how advanced their products are. If they're not exportable, their economy will crash and they will be impoverished back to the 1940s. And without the Chinese economy being so strong, the oil and gas of Russia will not have any other market to sell. And once they build this pipeline from Qatar through Syria to Europe, it's done for Russian gas and oil, and again, they will come. So anyone that wants to save the world and end imperialist hegemony must cheer for the Arabic people and their liberation, and hope that they can achieve that.
Yeah, and I'll just so you know, there'll be things that we agree or disagree. We're guessing. We're trying our best to guess. Nobody know, with these people, who the hell knows what they're going to do next week? You know what I mean? Are they going to bomb Venezuela and start a war in South America? Who knows what they're going to do? So I appreciate, look, if I think things a certain way and you say, I think it's a different way, that's what I think that people should hear, various options, because I don't know any more than you, but we're trying to use some historical context here and trying to figure things out. So that's great. I think that, the other thing that is of great consequence, believe it or not, is that because the U.S. was tied up in the Middle East and West Asia, whatever you want, they geared their entire military towards that, towards desert, towards fighting against non-traditional opponents, right? So they were set for IEDs, they were set for desert warfare, they were set for fighting against people who didn't have an air defense. You know what I mean? Because of that, their entire military complex now is not set in any way, shape, or form to fight what you would call a quote peer competitor. You know what I mean? They don't have, their stuff is all set up for fighting guys who rig IEDs in the desert. They're not set up to fighting a peer competitor. So the fight not only wore down and occupied the U.S. empire, but it dramatically deteriorated their military capabilities. And I'll just say this: I used to play pool. I used to like to play pool. Fun game. And here's what I found. I would play with guys that I could beat. And I didn't, and then I didn't get better. And then I would play with guys who beat the daylights out of me. And I got so much better. I'd play guys that would just pulverize me, and I just got better and better. So I started playing with the really, really good players to improve my game. In fighting against people who don't have high tech, right? All constantly, you gear towards that. Now that the potential is there for fighting high-tech people, like when they went to Ukraine, they got nothing for it. You understand what I'm saying? They've dragged themselves to a position where they're not in a position to fight a peer competitor at all. And not to mention, I might add, don't even ask the people here to join them in a fight. Don't even say to American young people, you're getting drafted. As I said, the country will burn to a ground because none of them will go.
Yes. Look, I think, look, all of these things are obviously in the hypothetical, and me and you could be 100% wrong. And you're right. We're just, looking at history and trying to predict future from it, or looking at the wars and behaviors of these leaders to kind of chart a path for where they're going with it. But the bloodlust that we're seeing over the last 14 months is unprecedented since World War II. And so we are in a very dangerous time. And, at any moment, by the way, just a few hours ago before we got on air, the head of Russia's nuclear and biological weapon deterrence was assassinated in the middle of Moscow. That's not an action of a rational opponent. This is an action of an irrational opponent. And I think the biggest weakness up until now of Russia, China, and the Axis of Resistance has been their insistence on rationality, their insistence on international law, their insistence on talking about human rights and sovereignty and non-interference. I mean, your opponent, the Americans and the Israelis, are just genociding live on television, occupying as many countries as possible, conducting the largest air raid campaign since World War II over Syria in the last week. Can you imagine? Syria, this small country, bombarded like never before since World War II, any other country? The explosions that we saw in Tartus and Latakia last night, they clearly are tactical nukes are being used right now on the Syrian army that is surrendered. So as long as Russia, China, and Iran continue to pretend that they can sit on a table and play chess or Go, while your opponent is not playing that, their opponent is playing chicken and is driving his monster truck over you and the table. As long as that's happening, the axis of resistance, the Iranian, the Russians, the Chinese are going to be on the losing end. And this is, I don't know when are they going to awaken to that, because there is no more international law. There is no UN, there is no bodies that can govern the relations between states anymore. They have to stop pretending, and they have to act and create facts on the ground. What the Israelis and the American elite up until now have been very successful at is forcing facts on the ground. You keep on talking, I destroy your whole country and I invade Syria. That's not at war with them. The Syrian government collapsed. There is the Wahhabi death squads that are in control of Damascus are saying, I'm not at war with Israel. I will not allow anybody to attack Israel from my territory. And I've disarmed all the Palestinian resistance. And yesterday they were slaughtering the PFLP, the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, on the border here with Lebanon. There was a huge battle between the HTS and the PFLP, and the Lebanese treasonous armies blocked the way out for the PFLP from Syria. Anyways, this is all happening, and the Israelis are like, okay, I occupy more land. I bombard you for a whole week nonstop, 700 air raids at least, hugest weapons that we've ever seen being used. So this is the problem in how Russia, China, and Iran are behaving. They are talking about a game that doesn't exist anymore, international law. They are appealing to world opinion that doesn't matter. As I said before to you, Western populists are all eunuchs, are all castrated. None of them up until now, up until Luigi, nobody wanted to carry arms against their own state. So what are you appealing to? You have to take action. And as long as the Russians and Chinese and Iranians play it this way, they're on the losing end.
Yeah, I don't know what, it's obvious that these drones are American drones. I kind of think to be honest with you, that is a response to Luigi killing, that the U.S. ruling elite are afraid, and now they're coming up with ways to control, threaten, whatever their own populace. You know what I mean? I don't think it's an accident that this happens. And then within days, all of these drones are flying all over the place, and people are like, what are they? Oh, they're nothing. We don't know what they are, but we kind of do, but we don't. And people are like, what are they? What are they? Within days after this Luigi killing, which says to me, I think the two are connected. And I think it's something they won't. I mean, if they were just drones that they were going to use overseas, they'd say, oh, we've got a new drone and it can do this or this. All mum's the word. And I think it's drones that they intend to use here, that maybe they'll say, okay, there's groups that we oppose or whatever, we're going to bomb them right here. But I think that there's something bad going on against the American people, and they recognize the potential for uprising right now, and they're preparing. They're at war with everybody, including the American people. What did I want to ask you about? Let me ask you this, one more thing. Okay, so you've got Syria now. And you've got these Wahhabi groups who, let's face it, historically, yeah, they'll work for Turkwan, but they also fight amongst themselves a lot. If I were the Gulf states, if I were Saudi Arabia, if I were some of these other Gulf states, I would be really concerned that they could be cooking up regime change operations. I mean, they're right there next to you. They're controlled by that. Now, if you're the Saudis, if you don't do what these neocons want, just a little. Remember, they were angry at the Saudis here recently when Biden came in and he was saying MBS is a terrible guy and all that. I think if I'm the Saudis, if I'm the Gulf states, there's no honor amongst thieves. I have to be concerned that they'll cook up some of these jihadis there. And if I don't do what they want at any time, they'll overthrow me too. Egypt, all of them. I'd be concerned about that. There's no honor amongst thieves, as they say.
Yes, and look at Jolani just announced that he's giving citizenship to all these Wahhabi death squads from the world. And the Syrians that are being ethnically cleansed and expelled from their land, they're going to lose their citizenship. The first thing that the Israelis did was bomb the Ministry of Immigration, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and the National Registry. The first day, in the first hours, they burned all the record of who is Syrian and who is not. The Israelis, and this is what's going to happen. The other thing is, obviously, the Israelis want to expel the Palestinians from the West Bank to Jordan. That's not going to happen as long as the Jordanian government is in power, even though it's a house slave government. So Turkey and its Wahhabi death squads will be attacking Jordan any minute now. Similarly, if so once the hordes are in Jordan, then what's to stop them from going in all the way to Mecca, for instance? The Ottomans want to recapture. Erdogan wants to be the Khalif of Islam. How can he be the Khalif without controlling the two holy cities of Mecca and Medina? So yes, you are right, and we can already see the Emirati government making statements condemning HTS and the West supporting HTS because they're afraid. I mean, there is no such thing, by the way, as Emirates or Emirati. I mean, it's a country of 1 million citizens, half of them given citizenship over the last 50 years from other Gulf countries, and then 9 million foreign workers. What country exists like that? There's no country. It's not a country if there's 9 out of the 10 people on your territory are not citizens. Okay? So the collapse of these countries is coming if it doesn't stop right now. And I think the Iranians, if they're smart, they will preempt this by doing their own attack. But I don't have that delusion or hope in the Iranians doing this. I wish. If the Iranians were smart tactically, they would have burnt all the oil fields 14 months ago in the Arabic world and brought the Western economy to a halt. And they would have, created. They wouldn't have watched as Azerbaijan destroyed Armenia. Okay, the Iranians did a lot of mistakes, strategic mistakes, over the last 4 or 5 years, even before the Aqsa flood began, and all of it because of their insistence on trying to look better than the West. Okay, so they got their neighbor Armenia destroyed, Azerbaijan, becoming a base for the Israelis. They had, what happened in Iraq, what happened in Syria, what happened. All of it, they're holding themselves back. They don't want to be fully, brutal as the West. And in this game, when you have a genocidal regime, like let's say the Nazis, the West had to bombard Dresden and kill hundreds of thousands of Japanese to stop the war. The West didn't offer democracy to the Japanese and the Nazis as the way out of the war. No, they went full in brutal. And up until now, the Russians, the Iranians, and even the Chinese are not contemplating such moves.
Yeah, I think that I don't know where Erdogan falls in, but I do think that I'll put it like this: the Saudis and other countries are going to look back to the day that they, worked with the West in Syria and the Wahhabi death squads in Syria and all that. And they're going to say, boy, that was a mistake, because now these monsters are going to come home to threaten them. And you see the deals, the Israelis saying, we want greater Israel. Right. So, okay, we take this area around here. The Turks saying we want a new empire. So now guess what? Saudis got to go. The Saudi, because you got that. It's interesting. You said the same thing I said. Well, they got to take Mecca and Medina if they want, to lay claim to be the true leader of the Muslim world. They got to take that, and at that point, they take the whole thing. So, we will be interesting to see. We will talk again next week. No doubt there'll be other craziness going on, and we just cross our fingers and try to survive another week here. And I'm sure, and oh, by the way, I don't know if you know it, there was a woman in Florida that got arrested because one of these healthcare companies had denied her. And when the guy shot this healthcare guy, he left 3 bullets that said like 3 words on them: defend, something, depose. And when they said to her, nah, we're not going to give you this, she said those 3 words, right? That's all. She said those 3 words. The system got so horrified, they went right to her house, took her, arrested her, and locked her up. They were so scared, oh my God, it's spreading, that you could see, she said 3 words. But and it was on the news everywhere. And I think the reason it was on the news was because they wanted to message out to people, if you say this or do something like this, and they showed her with handcuffs on, you know, and her head down in jail. I think it was like, we're scared to death. We've got to arrest her and we've got to show everyone this, you know, what'll happen if you stand up against us. But it ain't doing any good. You get the last word.
Yeah, they wanted to make an example of her, and this is what they did to the Palestinian people. They wanted to make an example of them for daring to stand up. This is what they did to the Syrian people for daring to dream of coexistence between religions and sects. They wanted to punish Syria for that. The elite in the West are bloodthirsty. They're cruel beyond imagination, and they like to drag people in the street. What do you call it when you lynch? Public lynching and scarlet letters. And we saw how many people that were defending Palestinian human rights that got their careers and names destroyed by the brutal media and elite in the West.
You brought something to mind. I want to, based on what, on that, I got to throw one other thing at you, because you said that. One last thing, because I got to hear your thoughts on this. What's interesting is these universities were the sons and daughters of the ruling elite. And when the sons and the daughters of the ruling elite basically said, our parents have gone too far with this Gaza thing, we don't like this, they beat the hell out of them and locked them up just like anyone else. Now, this guy, Luigi, is from Towson, Maryland, half hour from my house. His family owns a number of companies. I'm familiar with all of them, right? I mean, they're very rich, very, very, very wealthy. He's the son of the super rich. And the son of the super rich said, this is unjust, this is terrible, blah, 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 I'm going to shoot. What do you think of the dynamic where the progeny of the super rich actually carry out something like this? Like, their own kids are revolting. It's their own kids, in a way, are looking at their parents and saying, my parents are monsters. Do you have a comment on the fact that Columbia University, etc., Yale, the super rich kids were out there pushing, and this guy does that? What do you think anything of this particular strange dynamic?
Yeah, I mean, look, historically, there was always some of the sons of the elite that see the truth and revolt. Even Che Guevara, for instance, came from a rich family. Jesus or Muhammad or Moses, they're not, it doesn't mean that you are rich, that you're evil. Okay. It is just the inhumanity that some, forget, their place in life. But what we see is that now this is happening because of the collapse of the matrix of information control. We started this interview talking about how CNN lost 47% of its viewers. Well, this is true for all of mass media in the West. And streamers like yourself and others have a bigger reach globally than the mainstream media in the West. And this is now awakening anybody. Plus, the way that the individualism has isolated the citizens in the West from each other, from family, from neighbors, from neighborhood, from anything that could make them feel belonging. Now, there is hope because of that. There is hope because people are searching for meaning. The Western propaganda machine is not able to give them a meaning, anymore. So they're searching for meaning, and they're finding it in the new communal space that is social media, that is up until now, even with all the controls and algorithms, you still somehow can reach the truth if you look for it. Okay, so this is where individuals like Luigi are birthed. And at this moment, we need more Luigis. We shouldn't be just, attacking people because they're rich or not. we should be looking at, have this person awakened the humanity in them, and can they correct the mistakes that, let's say, their families were involved in? And I think Luigi probably played the death of his family right now.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Laith Marouf. Everyone, don't forget, then this is very important. If you don't remember anything else that we said today, and I'm sure you will, there was another powerful discussion, but if you don't remember anything else, remember this: freepalestine.video. Please go to freepalestine.video. I'm asking everyone to share this on all your social media platforms, but these kinds of discussions and all the work that Laith is doing is critical. So go to freepalestine.video and donate. If it's a one-time donation, great. Even better if you can become a monthly subscriber and donate monthly to keep that important work going. As the mainstream media collapses, people are looking for somewhere to go. Also, when you go to freepalestine.video, make sure that you follow them on X and wherever else they are on all their social media platforms, so you can get all the information that's coming out and you can update it. freepalestine.video. That is the critical thing that you're supposed to remember today, that you're supposed to share and you're supposed to tell all your friends about. Thank you very much, Laith Marouf. Thanks a lot, and I'm looking forward to talking to you again next week.
See you soon, Garland.
All right, let me end the stream here.